All right, I think we can get started. I would say I would say good morning, but I know that that's not it's not necessarily morning for everybody. It's morning for me. My name is Luke Steinke. I'm going to be moderating this live session. We are live currently. This is a collaborative event on adaptive expertise between Iveta and Skillman, and you can see the website here for Skillman. So this is a live event. We have some great speakers. The great part about this is you get to hear very little from me. I'm just lucky enough to be able to moderate this session. We have some wonderful speakers today. The way that this session will work is we have four speakers or four individuals that are going to be speaking very great deal of expertise in this particular area. And what we're going to do is we're going to have everybody, they're going to speak for about 10 minutes. If you have questions as they speak, we would encourage you to do one of two things. Either write those into the chat function and we will get to those at the end of this. Or if you think of something towards the end, if you want to raise your hand, that will be something that we can get to at that time. But we would ask that you save your questions. We only have an hour. So we want to utilize that time as best as possible. So again, you don't have to hear from me all that much. We do have some great speakers. So we'll share that information here. We have these four wonderful speakers today. The first will be Lillian von Usted, who's from Fonts University, and she'll be speaking to us. I'm not sure if she's here yet. Is she here yet?
I'm here.
Perfect.
I'm definitely here.
We'll have, we're going to start with Lillian, and I'll turn it over to her. And
that's fantastic. Thank you. I'm just going to always getting organized because I just came from class. We all know how that works, right? So you come running out and then, let me see, I'm going to share my screen because I have a PowerPoint. Yes. So if I'm not mistaken, oh gosh, we run into technical difficulties already.
Really, do you want me to do it?
Oh, could you please, because my computer doesn't allow Zoom somehow yet.
I'll take over, no problem.
Fantastic. That was one of the problems we had because I came in so late, and we knew that. So yeah, welcome to this session. So we're doing an Erasmus project on adaptive expertise, and from Fontes we sort of dive into this whole development of adaptive expertise. My name is Lillian van Oostende, and as we said, I work for Fontes. So could you please go on to the next slide? Thank you. So the first the thing that got us started a bit was this example. And the example is, you're in class and you're looking at a student, and you say, give me a fraction which lies between 1/2 and 3/4. And the pupil says 2/3, and you say, oh, that's very good. How do you know that it lies between 1/2 and 3/4? And the pupil says, well, 2 is between a 1 and a 3, and the 3 is between a 2 and a 4. Now, obviously, the pupil gave a correct answer, but it's not necessarily the answer you wanted, right? So how then, as a teacher, do you deal with that? Do you tell the pupil, you're wrong, that's not the reason? Or do you say, yes, it's a very good reason? So you have multiple sort of options to deal with that response. But in order to do that, you need to be adaptive. You need to have certain routines or possibilities to fall back on. So on the next slide, there are two types of adaptive expertise. The one is the postponed adaptive expertise in teaching, which is very much I've noticed something in my lessons, or I noticed something in school, and we're going to see whether we can improve that over time. And the other one is the direct adaptive expertise in teaching, which is much more focused on in-class activities. So those are the two types of adaptive expertise that we were focusing on. So first, I'm going to dive into the postponed adaptive expertise, because we felt at first there's so much known about postponed or prepared adaptive expertise in teaching, because it is very much prepared. It's something that you can really you can plan, you can make sessions about it, you can go through the year and think, okay, this happened this year and I'm going to reflect on that, and then next year I'm going to do it differently. So that's adaptive expertise, but over a longer period of time. And there are multiple ways to sort of work on that. You can think of lesson studies, where you would take a group of teachers together and you watch one of your colleagues' classes, and you really reflect on that together and make it better. I find that quite often prepared or postponed adaptive expertise is about cooperation. So you do that as a group and it's fantastic. But lesson study can be very good. You can also use, for example, as parallel inquiry. I know that my colleagues from Slovenia will probably talk about that a bit, which is really also about reflecting, and you can do that on a school. You can do that inside a school. You can go about it as a really learning community, or you can go about that on your own, but that's also very much prepared. I noticed something, I'm going to reflect on that. I'm going to ask my pupils, I'm going to look back again with what I know now from the pupils, and then I'm going to change something. And then you can think of professional learning design, learning communities like we do here as a learning design studios, where you're really designing your education, and you're looking for input for that, and you work together in a group and you give feedback on what you've been doing, and you think together, you cooperate, and you make your education better. So that's what we, postponed adaptive expertise is something that I think is, we know a lot about that. We do that every day. You never go, okay, I'm going to plan for a whole year and I'm not going to change anything. The direct adaptive expertise is in a way is quite different, because we all do this, right? This is improvised. We all improvise. In class, one of the things you do constantly is improvising, because you have continuous decision-making going on. There might be a student in the front that doesn't understand what you've just been explaining. You've tried so hard, but your student doesn't really understand. Or you might get a reaction from one of your students in behavior, for example. Somebody can be a bit, well, I'm not going to say annoying, but, can be a bit rowdy or be a bit noisy, and you have to respond to that. But if you look at all of these continuous decisions that you have to make, they seem to be very much related to routine experience. The more routines you have, the easier it becomes to change your approaches, to change the way you respond. So on the next slide, you'll find, this is a graph. And what it basically says is you have an efficient, a routine teacher, and you have a novice. And if you want the novice teacher to innovate constantly and to be adaptive immediately, he might get frustrated. Whereas if you only have routine, you'd be very efficient, but it doesn't really allow you to be adaptive. The optimal adaptability corridor here tells us that you need routine expertise to innovate. So in order to become adaptive, you need routines and you need to be innovative. And that is an issue because we are working with trainees, so people wanting to become a teacher. And I think if you click again, Valentina, you'll find that there's a question there. And that's, how do we teach our student teachers to become more adaptive if they are still a novice? They don't have the routines yet. You know, that's going to be a problem, because if we say they need routine to become more adaptive, then, you know, we need to come up with ways to really quickly show them routines so that they can become better at becoming adaptive teachers. So part of what we will be doing is we're going to look at ways of helping them develop this adaptive expertise. So the next slide is, this is purely brainstorm yet. This is in the way we've been doing the brainstorm now, and just fragments of our imagination, because this is what we'll be doing next year. So the first one is, for example, a laddering interview, where you really ladder what is important for the teacher and then figure out how do you do that in class and how can you work on that. So that's a laddering interview. And the second, which I think is very interesting, is really doing a lesson recording and reflecting on several ways. Okay, you responded in that way, you can reflect on it. Were there different manners you could have responded? You know, there are different ways, different things you could have said, different tools you could have used, so that next time they can use that in class. And then the third one, I think, is also very interesting, is improv, so improvisational theater. We know that actors in improvisational theater learn a lot of these ground rules for, you know, the yes, but rules, so that you always go on instead of, you know, you fall quiet. And also they learn a lot of routines to keep discussions and conversations going. And that might be very useful for our students when they have to become more adaptive as well. And then, of course, there's also an option to use, for example, virtual reality, in which you can actually give them a student that doesn't respond the way that they want them to respond, and perhaps have them think about, okay, what am I going to say now? And perhaps come up with different ways to respond. And then what we want to do as well is we do want to develop protocols for it. So really cooperation with other teachers, and really thinking, getting our students to think about, how do I do this in class? Could have done it a different way, etc. So that's basically what we want to do in the next year and a half. And of course, you know, if anybody has ideas about that, feel free to contact me, you know, because we're really looking for ideas as well. And, you know, if change is the only constant factor in education, you know, it's really, really important then that we are adaptive to what our students need, and also what we can give them, and the way we can train our teachers to become more adequate and constantly changing. So thank you for your attention. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Lillian. That was great. Again, if you have questions for Lillian, as you've gone through this, we just encourage you to send those via the chat, or just save them to the end. If you're taking notes like I do, then you're going to have an opportunity to do that as well. So again, we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions here at the end. So that's great. Thank you so much. Our second speaker today is going to be Sasha Krieger. She is a biology teacher and consultant over at the National Education Institute in the Republic of Slovenia. Or is that right? Slovenia? Am I correct?
Yes,
on that one?
You are correct.
Perfect. Good.
Correct.
My goal was to not butcher too much today. So I'll turn it over to her, and we can hear from her.
Okay, I hope that I successfully share my screen. Right, I think I do. Yeah, thank you. So thanks for the introduction. So I come from Slovenia, from National Education Institute. Yes, I am biology teacher, and I'm also now working as a consultant for biology and on the sector of the secondary schools. So as Lillian, also National Education Institute is involved in the project Adaptive Expertise, and I will talk a little bit much more about how to introduce or how we try to introduce adaptive expertise in our schools. Well, in this rapidly changing world, we should constantly make the difference. And of course, adaptive expertise is now gaining in importance. And being adaptive expert is absolutely not a permanent feature. It means that, as also Lillian said, it means that you are constantly developing and responding to the students' needs. And of course, all that student needs are changing, that you have to seek new knowledge, that you have to find new solutions, explore new solutions, that you evaluate your work, that you are self-regulated, that you actually act transformatively. And we wanted to introduce the adaptive expertise into our schools. Actually, we joined this project, and we joined this project also with the intention of actually continuing the process of changing learning and teaching culture in Slovenia. And our goal is to enable the participation of each student in our classrooms and to ensure the principles, the 7 principles of learning. As you can see on the map, we invited in the project 8 schools, 6 primarily and 2 secondary schools. And those chosen schools were schools which really have experience in formative assessment. And this actually means that they follow the strategies of formative assessment in their daily classroom practice, like that they co-construct success criteria with the students, that they gather diverse learning evidence, that they give feedback, that they receive feedback, that they also are aware of importance of responding on the feedback they received, that they just have constantly self-evaluation, peer evaluation, regulation of the learning process, and so on and so on. These strategies of formative assessment are actually made by Willem Dilliam and Paul Black, and we are like understanding the assessment for learning or formative assessment through these strategies. And also we believe that flexibility and adaptation in the classroom is needed when a teacher wants to adjust teaching and learning to the students' needs. We see the philosophy of adaptive expertise very complex, and as I said, we would like to introduce it through formative assessment. And this scheme shows us that actually we believe that formative assessment is in the core, is essential, and we believe that it enables teachers to adapt to the student needs, through involving each student, to making students active all the time, and to enable all the 7 principles of learning, which are really essential for a successful and effective learning environment. And we also believe that ongoing teacher inquiry is also important, and this shows that spiral of inquiry. And our teachers will, during that process with the students, actually inquire their learning and teaching culture and adapt it to the student needs and changing it all the time. And we see adaptive expertise like above everything. And of course, we hope our model of introducing it will be successful. Actually, we would like to develop learning and teaching culture where teachers are constantly asking who my students are, what are they telling me, give them the voice of, be aware that voice of the student voice is so much important. And of course, all the time responding on their needs. And actually this slide shows, this picture actually shows how our teachers will work, or they work now, because we started the project maybe half or even more 6 months ago. Actually, they will use a formative, as you can see on the slide, use the formative assessment strategies to establish that effective learning environment. But that process will be developing through the spiral of inquiry, where very close connection with the students will be essential. So all the time asking who my students are and what they are actually telling me. 3 main questions will be the focus, and we believe that in that kind of working, we will also maybe improve or to move closer to all the 7 principles of learning, and of course establish adaptive expertise. So this is in briefly the model we would like to try it in Slovenia and in our schools, and of course in our project. You can ask me also some other things in the chat if you would like to get some more information about our approach. So thank you for now.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Very nice. Again, I see that some of you are already making some comments in the chat and asking questions. I think that's great. But again, if you have questions for Sasha and want to learn a little bit more about what they're doing, please be sure to do that. I think we can also share some of the contact information for some of our speakers towards the end of this as well. So again, if you think of something at some other time, you'll be able to do that. Our final 2 speakers are we have 2 are Doreen Samperman and Elizabeth Broman from Catholic Education in Flanders. They're going to be speaking to us on adaptive expertise as well. So I'm going to turn it over to them and give them their opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what they're doing.
Thank you. I will share the PowerPoint. Okay, I think you all can see now. Hello, Doreen and I work at Catholic Education Flanders. We are pedagogical advisors at the Department Professionalization and Internationalization. In this presentation, we will focus on how we as an organization introduce adaptive expertise at policy level. Catholic Education Flanders is a network organization that unites the boards of all Catholic schools. Altogether, we represent more than 2,400 schools. Catholic Education Flanders is tasked with the religious and pedagogical vision on Catholic education, as well as with its vision on management and development. The organization speaks for its members and represent them at government level, in the society and in the Catholic Church. The focus of this presentation are the primary schools. We represent approximately 1,500 primary education schools. In our organization, pedagogical advisors provide support to implement all sorts of innovations. Important to know, the Flemish government determines attainment targets, and Catholic education processes these attainment targets commissioned by her school boards into a network-specific curriculum. ZIL is the new curriculum for primary education schools. It can be translated as love to learn and love to live. ZIL has the main target to realize inclusive education in a diverse context. I want to go deeper why ZIL is an example of adaptive expertise. Within love to learn and love to live, it is important for teachers to get a focus, and taking into consideration the context, the curriculum, and the pupils. But also, it's very important to choose learning opportunities to achieve goals within the focus. In the slide, you also see that learning environments must be powerful, and they are powerful when teachers reflect on how they develop and how they execute the learning activities. Very important is the evaluation phase. Where teachers evaluate the pupils, but also their own practice. They investigate their own quality, but also the school and team quality. Many teachers have forgotten how to creatively use their educational luggage, and love to learn and love to live would like to activate this luggage. Therefore, we use this powerful learning environment, so teachers learn how to create fast and efficient, powerful learning environments for the targets they pursue within the children. So actually, we could say that this curriculum is a framework that is meant as a user's manual, and that manual should, one, facilitate the curricula discussion in a team, two, give a clear overview in the course of 9 years elementary school, three, supply success criteria for the assessment of pupils to education devices and educational quality, and four, also inspire day-to-day education. Now it's on you, Doreen.
Yes, Lisbeth explained already what a powerful learning environment is, and how the new curriculum at Catholic Education Flanders includes lots of aspects of adaptive expertise. And I will explain a bit more how we implemented this new curriculum, because paying attention to all these aspects and having teachers creating powerful learning environments, paying attention to the focus, including both each pupil's curriculum and the context, and even the evaluation and the focus on evaluation, which is also very important in adaptive expertise. To do this, we needed a good implementation process at Catholic Education Flanders, and I will explain this a bit. The first phase is the development phase, and the lead was taken in our organization by the curriculum development department. That's a specific department, but they didn't do it on their own. They didn't create this new curriculum just like that. They collaborated a lot with the work field, and this discussion was really necessary to understand the needs in the work field. And one of the examples that was brought in the project through the learning labs is the conclusion that we don't want to have the regular learning area subjects, but that teachers wanted more learning areas. And this way, one of the examples below, you can see a picture of all the learning areas that were defined by the teachers that they really loved to emphasize in their work, was the development of orientation towards the world. And that includes the classical geography and biology, and emphasizing these learning areas. What is nice in this presentation is that the learning areas are divided in two groups: personal development and cultural development. And the cultural development is always connected to aspects from the personal development. So teachers play with this idea of learning areas, and this is one of the innovations. So that's just one example in the development phase that we brought into the new curriculum. Then in the implementation phase, we go one step forward. We go from the curriculum department to professional trainers. In our organization, we have lots of professional trainers, and they organize learning activities. And during these learning activities, teachers become familiar with the new learning plan. So they're partly content specific, but also they have a focus on the implementation of new didactics, which are definitely part of the adaptive expertise idea. And very important also, evaluation, how to evaluate the own class practice at the learners level, the classroom level, and also the school level. So the evaluation teachers do by themselves. So that's the implementation phase. And then the last phase is the coaching phase. And the coaching phase is the phase we are in right now in our organization. In this phase, we have pedagogical advisors, and they provide specific support to schools tailored to the needs of the schools, and even schools that learned about the new curriculum. They can ask very concrete questions in our organization, and then a pedagogical advisor comes to the school, visits the school, and provides coaching activities. And these coaching activities, they are related to, again, the curriculum, so they can dig a bit deeper in the curriculum. And school and quality is also very important. We have advisors specialized in this topic. They provide support on how to manage the quality. And then you have the spiral of inquiry. All things are coming back, all aspects of adaptive expertise. And of course, you need good leadership to implement innovation. And also they provide, these specialists on the topic of leadership, provide input, including aspects of adaptive expertise. So that's a quick overview of how our organization works. So thank you very much. And whenever you have more questions, don't hesitate to contact us. These are some details.
Great, thank you both for sharing your experiences and how you're implementing this into your different programs. I think that's very informative. And again, thank you so much to all of our speakers for taking the time. We do have some time now. We do have about 25 minutes for questions. So if anybody has questions, and there's a few that we have here, or if you would like to share some of your experiences as far as implementing or dealing with adaptive expertise, I think this would be a great time for that. I will say, if we do have a variety of those, if you have a 45-minute anecdote about how you're implementing adaptive expertise, we probably don't have time for that. So if you would probably keep, if you're going to share an experience, if you would keep that to about, 5 minutes or so, or maybe even a little bit less, that would be great. Or if you're going to ask a question, make sure that, you give our presenters an opportunity to answer that. We do have a few questions that have been provided. I'll try to read one or two of them. One of the first ones that came up here was, what's the best, what would be the best training design for adaptive expertise? And I'll kind of just throw this out to our presenters to see, which one of you would maybe want to respond to that. So the question is, what's the best training design for adaptive expertise?
Maybe a quick reply. The training design, we already organized in our organization training activities related to the new curriculum, and it's entailed lots of parts of adaptive expertise, and evaluation is really important in this coaching, co-creating, and this is what we're doing right now. So the coaching phase, and the first phase was co-creating, and then you have the regular trainings, but it's important that the coaching phase is available for teachers, and that they can be directed back to the other phases, and its cycle, and it's ongoing, and it's not just a training which provides the input and teachers deal with it like that. So that's one of the things I connect to the cycle of inquiry and things in adaptive expertise and in the theory.
Yes, so I don't think there's a, what is the best? I don't think there's a best training design. I think, as Doreen said, there should be lots of opportunity to evaluate, to reflect on what you're doing, to look back on what you're doing. And I think ideally you should have some form of cooperation where you really look at your teaching practice together, and you can help each other as well.
And if I can just add something, maybe also that relationship you are establishing with your students is so much important, because if you want to receive feedback from them and respond to them, then you have really work on changing your culture of teaching, and this is not the process which can be reached by training. This is really a process, long-lasting process, and you must all the time question yourself and answer on the questions, and be prepared for also teacher self-regulation, which is not easy. It's absolutely not easy.
Thank you. Sasha, I would agree with that. I mean, I think one of the key things that we have to think about when we think about expertise is expertise takes, so any form of expertise takes a great deal of time to develop. I often say to my students, who, the first time they try something and they maybe don't perform it at a high level, I have to tell them, remind them, look, the first time we ever try anything, we probably aren't going to be very good at it. So in order for us to be able to develop any form of expertise, it takes a great deal of time. So thank you. Yeah. Anyone else want to respond to that particular question? Because if not, we have another question about the difference between a transformative expert and an adaptive expert. So I don't know if anybody would like to tackle that particular question. So what's the difference between a transformative expert and adaptive expert?
Perhaps, I don't know who asked the question, but perhaps that person can briefly explain what he means with a transformative expert, so that we can relate to that.
Okay, I can talk about it. There are many similarities among an adaptive expert and a transformative. The one thing is that both of them are close to the students' needs. Another thing is that they want to change and they have the flexibility towards their teaching. And I think that the main difference, but I'm not sure, is correlating the way how we face the feedback formative assessment. Is that the main difference among them? Because flexibility, good connection with the children, wanting to change them or wanting to have a cooperative culture, all these are common to the two experts. And I think maybe the differences among their attitude towards the assessment, towards the quality, towards the future of the students, things like that. I don't know if I can help any one of you to answer.
Well, if I understand it, I think that that if you act transformatively, you can also be adaptive. I think that, of course, this is not two different things, but they are very much, I cannot say the same, but I think that if you want to be adaptive, then you have to act also transformatively. And that transformation actually means that you are aware of what students are bringing into the classroom and working on that. And of course, the knowledge of that, what students are bringing into the classroom also means that you have to be open to them and everything, which actually also adaptive expertise is.
Yes, and another thing is that you put the focus on any student as a separate individual. So you focus on anyone separately. That's it. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Great questions. Does anybody else want to respond to that one? Or I think we do have another question regarding the core skills needed for adaptive expertise. We want to maybe talk a little bit about what are some of those core skills that somebody needs in order to be able to develop adaptive expertise.
I have another question, but it's not exactly from the adaptive expertise. It's about the pedagogical advisors who the lady from the Catholic, I think, talk about us, which will be their specific qualification in order to do this advice to the pedagogical part of it. That's it. Okay.
Yes, in our organization, we have different types of pedagogical advisors, specialized in different topics. Some are specialized in leadership, other quality, assessment of the schools, and some are really specialized in specific topics like biology, maths specialists, and I think most of them are former teachers, former principals, and educational researchers. So, and together they are a pool of pedagogical advisors, and they have their own trainings within our organization. So the internal professionalization, that they all are like-minded within Catholic Education Flanders. They explain the background of our organization, connect our vision on quality and pedagogy, and then they work on the school level or throughout whole Flanders. So is a brief explanation of our system of pedagogical advisors.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions related to that at all? So then we did have a question about the core skills. I don't know if anybody wanted to address that. Some of the core skills that maybe were needed for that.
I remember we had a discussion about that at the beginning. I think one of the things you actually would need is a sort of a growth mindset, but that's a really open term. But I suppose you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to, as Sasha put it, connect to your students as opposed to just teaching what you want to teach. You have to be able to connect it to people to see what their needs are. So I think those are really core qualities that you need in order to be adaptive.
Anybody else want to address core skills? If not, we do have another question regarding somebody mentioned one of the projects here that that was talked about. Let's see, both these are me. Okay, same question. Okay, you know, so like how essentially it looks like how have some of the projects changed during the pandemic. So if some of these were implemented, some of your projects were implemented prior to the pandemic, you know, how is that? How have they changed? Have they changed at all? I kind of addressed this question to everybody.
I think throughout the pandemic, we found out we were much more adaptive than we could have imagined before going into this computer era where we're now all teaching online and giving presentations online. So yeah, it did change. I think we now realize much more that everybody can be adaptive and that you just need to put your mind to it and that we can do more than we originally thought we could. For our project, I think we did take that in mind a bit already. So for us, that didn't change much with regard to the project.
Anyone else want to address that real quick?
Yes, please.
Yes, so we have a question. So Dr. Mahi, would you like to ask a question?
Yes, thank you for this webinar. My question is for the first presentation about the principles of learning. I didn't find anything about the skills. So my question, does the skills not important as a principle for learning? Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
It's okay. My question is for the first presentation about the principles of learning. I didn't find anything about the skills. So does the skills not an important principle for learning? Thank you.
So the question is about from the first presentation about the skills. You saw the principles, but not the actual skills.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Lillian, do you want to address that? He's asking a little bit about, like, in the presentation, did you have a specific, I mean, we can go back to whatever slide if we want.
I think he's asking a question about the principles of learning. Wasn't that Sasha's presentation?
Yeah, I also think, but he mentioned the first presentation, that's why.
So yeah, that was yours, but okay, Sasha,
I see the principles, and OECD also, of course, publish those principles of learning. I see them like important things for establishing effective learning environment, but skills, of course, connected with knowledge are something which is very important to reach during the classroom lessons. But the effective learning environment also encourage everything, gaining skill, developing skills, and of course gaining knowledge and everything together, because you cannot separate skills and knowledge, but you are of course, those things are very much important for the competencies and so on. So I think that, of course, they are important, but principles are more and less something for establishing the learning environment.
Great. Dr. Mahid, does that answer your question? I think so. Okay. Well, we'll move on to our next question. We have another question about adaptive expertise. Is a mindset shift. So is it a mindset shift on the part of educators than actual implementation of techniques? So is adaptive expertise more of a mindset shift on the part of educators than an actual physical implementation of techniques? So that's our question.
That's such an interesting question. I think it goes back to what I've shown you about that corridor. You need the mindset, but you cannot do it if you don't have the routines and the skills to constantly be adaptive and change the manner in which you teach. So mindset is very important. You need it in order to be adaptive. Some of my colleagues a few weeks ago talked about emotional Bluetooth, knowing what your students need. But you do need the skills in order to be able to adapt to your students' needs. So no, I don't think it's more of a mindset than a skills thing. It goes hand in hand.
I think that's an excellent point, because again, we always often talk about if somebody was to, we think about like the skill set of troubleshooting. Well, if you don't have the most basic skill set, there's no way you can really troubleshoot, So it's, again, you have to develop that initial expertise, or as you talked about, that routine expertise, in order to be able to develop that adaptive expertise. So I think that's a great point. Is adaptive expertise a new pathway in education for the future, even in times of disruption? So we have that question. So is it a new pathway for education for the future?
I think when we look at our organization at Catholic Education Flanders and the needs of the schools in times of disruption, we have more questions and more needs that raise up. And when we analyze those needs, they're often close connected to adaptive expertise, and lots of our knowledge in adaptive expertise can answer those questions. So I think, yes, in times of disruption, it's a new pathway, but it's not, it's new in sense that we combine, also what Lillian said before, it's a new mind shift and some new implementation of techniques, and it's not a complete erasure of everything what was before. It's how we deal with education in this disruptive situations.
Yes, and also that pandemic, I think that pandemic period, which is lasting and lasting, also shows to the teachers that if they really want to reach all the students, they were not in the classroom for Slovenia for almost a year, if they really want to reach each student, they should really adapt to their needs, and they should really make a connection with each student. And I think that all those diversity among students the teachers will be much more aware of of that diversity now after that maybe pandemic situation. Our teachers are saying like that. Now we are aware how much feedback is important, how much is important that the teacher got some I don't know, feedback from me and so on. I think they will be much more aware of that, of importance of that.
Great. Another question, regarding, this being somewhat of a game changer. When you've implemented this, has there been pushback? Have there been teachers that have kind of said, this isn't for me, and they maybe have moved towards retirement? Because again, after we've done something the same way for X amount of time, and now something is going to be implemented that's new. Have you seen resistance to that? Have you seen individuals that instead of participating have retired instead? Have you seen that kind of pushback?
I think that's normal to every kind of innovation you bring into schools. You always have different reactions. Just showing examples and showing what works. And of course, adaptive expertise is about reflection and evaluation. So every critical question contributes to adaptive expertise. So going into dialogue with these critiques is the best way to introduce adaptive expertise.
Well, we have one more question. I'll try to get to one more here. Can anybody provide a simple example of how adaptive expertise can be implemented to address diversity in today's classroom? So kind of make this our last question here, if anybody wants to address that. So how, and just a simple example of how it can be, adaptive expertise can be implemented to address diversity in today's classroom.
I have an example. I think a few weeks ago, I heard a teacher who teaches at the last year at primary school, but in the pandemic, she had to reinvent herself. So she made movies about how to teach, how to learn French in our lessons, and the children were very enthusiastic, because there were some children who had to see the film one time and they knew it, but some children were very lucky, they could watch the movie several times, and so she told me she learned that when the students now are back in class, and she uses all the different movies to help the children who needs more support, or to look at the movies in advance or afterwards. So I think that's a very beautiful example on how she learned from this pandemic, and how she react on the differences in her classroom. And she was very adaptive, yes, I think. Yeah.
That's a great example. It's a great example. And with that, we can conclude. I'd like to thank everybody for participating, our speakers in general, for being here today and taking the time out of their day to share their experiences. I think that's been great. I'd like to thank Skillman for hosting this and being a part of this, along with Iveta, for being in collaboration and working so hard to put all of this together, to everybody that worked in getting all of you together, to setting up this entire thing. I think this was a great event, and I appreciate everybody taking the time to not only to present, but also to participate, to ask questions. I would encourage everybody, please, some of this information is going to be out there as far as to visit Skillman, their website, we had it up front and presented, as long as IVETA. So that's at iveta.global. So Julian is sharing both of those in the chat right now, and so is Valentina. So that's out to everybody. So if you have an opportunity, go check out both of those sites. I would be remiss to not plug IVETA's journal. So please, again, those of you that have expertise in adaptive expertise, as the editor of the journal, I'd love to see some articles related to that. So if you do have something in the works and you want to write about that, I'd love to see that as well. So if we don't have any other questions, I think we can wrap this up. Again, thank you very much, everybody.